All right, and welcome to the back to the Omnia Sol Art Show. Today we are joined by musician David Brown from David Brown and the Tomorrow Men, also formerly Secondary Modern, and various other projects. David, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. And tonight we're also glitching a variety of Godzilla movies, including Godzilla Destroy All Monsters, as well as Godzilla versus Megalon. And so, first question out of the gate, I wanted to ask you kind of what's your relationship with Godzilla movies and why did you want to see them glitched on the show tonight?
My relationship with Godzilla movies is fairly straightforward. They rule, um, clearly, as you can just see by looking at one. But I'm not a particularly nostalgic person, but it was pretty much my go-to for being homesick or pretending to be homesick viewing from school when I was growing up. I watched a ton of Godzilla and taped them pretty much every time there was one that I didn't think I already had on tape. So I grew up with a lot of Godzilla tapes.
Do you have a favorite one?
Mecha Godzilla probably just because
Nice.
like Godzilla versus Mecha Godzilla because I mean they kind of painted themselves into a corner and eventually they had to go Mecha Godzilla. Like, where else could they have gone, really? What about you?
I'll have to throw that in one. Right now, I don't know. I really like Destroy All Monsters just because of all the different monsters in it. I really like anything with Mothra. Big Mothra fan, and I like Godzilla versus Mechalon because of the introduction of Jet Jaguar. Because
Yeah,
I guess
the
yeah,
song.
Ultraman being so huge, they were just like, we got to make our own version. And Jet Jaguar is such a cool name, and it's such a good costume. And I love the GIF of Godzilla and Jet Jaguar like shaking hands at the end. It's just like
Yeah,
so cute and funny.
yeah. I'm not going to try and sing the song, but the Jet Jaguar song is definitely something that I think about as I walk this earth.
Did you have you seen Shin Godzilla?
No.
I definitely recommend it. I think it came out in 2015 or 2016. I could be wrong on the year, but it's the director of the anime Neon Genesis Evangelion either like helped direct it or had a big part in it, but it's kind of like a reboot of Godzilla, and it's a yeah, kind of a remake of the original one, but it's so good. I don't know the right word for it, visceral compared to I feel like the American Godzilla movies now. I guess in the ones with the costumes too, they do kind of like have human arms because it is human arms in it. But the Godzilla now, it's so just like buff and odd looking, anthropomorphic. Where this is just like a terrifying dinosaur that's like evolving and destroying Tokyo, and it's I don't know, it's great. It's definitely recommend it. They're doing a Shin Ultraman and a Shin Common Rider as well. So it's Toho is rebooting these old franchises and making them new, and it's interesting.
Yeah, that sounds great. It's on the docket.
So what do you have going on musically? I guess let's start with talking about kind of your history with music and recording. I met you all the way back in Carbondale. I don't remember what year, but it was when I was going to college, and it was back when you were playing with Secondary Modern, and I've kind of like followed your career since we've lived in different places, and you've Secondary Modern, a ton of solo stuff. So yeah, what is your kind of history with music? How did you get started?
I mean, I've played with my brother who was in secondary modern. We kind of picked up instruments at the same time when we were very young. So we were kind of always a band, at least in our heads. So I was probably like five or so when I started playing guitar, and then he started playing drums. But I mean, we were in kind of various versions of whatever that band was supposed to be in our heads for a long time. And then Once I was in college, or right at the end of high school, I think is when we started secondary modern, the first version. And then, yeah, things, I mean, obviously, and Danny, my brother, was still in high school at that time. So um, I was kind of also making music with other people that were in college with me, because I went, to college nearby, which is where you went at SIU. Um, and yeah, it kind of, but the thing with Danny, secondary modern was always a thing, for about a decade, really. Um, but then, since then, I kind of, I've sort of just tried to explore whatever I felt like doing at the time, and I've never really cemented a band situation after that. I think just because it was such a long time of being in a group with the same people, which was, fantastic because they could all play and we were all got along really well. But what I do now, or who knows what I do now, really. What I'm up to now is more like improv and like lots of sounds, and I've been playing the drums a lot. And live, that could mean, I guess, whatever I'm feeling at the time. So there's a lot less to hold on to in terms of like, oh, this is a song called this, and
Mm-hmm.
here's another one that you might know from the record that we put out. Whereas now it's more just kind of like, well, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do, and hopefully it's not self-indulgent or annoying. I think it goes over okay, though.
Yeah. What's your kind of approach to experimentation? Do you have kind of idea in your head of something you want to sound like, or is it just sort of like picking up an instrument, improvising with that? Like, I really feel like, is it, yeah, is it more kind of drawn towards like, I want something that sounds like this, or is it more like, I feel like playing the drums right now. I'm going to see what I can do there.
Yeah, the latter, I would say. At this point, hopefully, and really only because I've been playing not just the guitar, but I mean I've played the drums since I was a kid too, and the piano and keys and stuff. So at this point, I feel like I can adequately express myself to some degree on those instruments, and I can, and so yeah, it's more like I feel like playing the drums, and I think that I can sort of get something across the way that I'm feeling or whatever. And I might go to the drums to make that work for me. It's hard to say if you nail it. That's the thing, is
Yeah.
like with this stuff, it's also uncharted for me, other than the last couple of years, really. So it's a lot more fun for me, and I like kind of searching for something that way, rather than always doing something that I know I can nail, because I've certainly bombed in front of, more than a couple people, more than a couple times.
Uh-huh. Do you think, is there ever been a case where you think people really notice that you bombed? I just ask because I know every musician friend I know is so critical of themselves, and every time I see a set, they're like, "Oh, that was terrible. I messed up here and there." And it's like, even if I've listened to someone all their albums, it's like I've never been to a concert where like people can tell that someone is like, unless it's like the speakers blow out or like there just is no sound. A lot of times people can't tell what is intentional and what's not intentional. um,
Right. That's a good point.
do you kind of consider it bombing just based on the audience's reaction, or
I you know I Yeah, I think you're right. I should probably be less hard on myself. I would consider it bombing based on my own interpretation of whether or not I got I accomplished sort of sonically what I was trying to do.
Mhm.
Um, you're right. I mean, most of the time, if I feel a little down about the set, there's going to be somebody whose opinion I even trust, who will be like, "Oh, that was really good," and So I'll just go with that. I mean, even if they were just being nice,
Hmm.
I'll just take it at this point. Um, yeah.
So in your last release of new bird sounds, I noticed there's a lot of tape manipulation on it too. Uh, Kind of going with our conversation about experimentation, can you tell me about that? How did you get started with using tape manipulation as kind of an instrument or a sound?
Sure. I mean, I sort of got started with it because I had been recording a lot of things on tape, and so I I liked just kind of messing with it, and then you know, eventually, when you like messing with it enough, you're going to cut it up into pieces and see if you can put it back together. Same with anything. Like I used to take toasters and stuff apart when I was a kid. I'm sure I never put them back together right, but I always had fun doing it. Um, so initially, I would just kind of take random bits of tape and splice them together, and I was really just learning how to splice tape in general. And then I would make a loop and play it and see what. Generally, you would spend a lot of time doing it, and it would sound pretty, you know, pretty dumb, honestly, most of the time. There wasn't a lot going on, but I guess as with anything, you sort of start to understand what it is you're working with. And so I would try and find specific kinds of tape, or I would record specific kinds of music onto a tape. Um, and then I would be manipulating it, splicing things together at certain lengths that I knew would play back at, like, oh, this will play back at 7.5 seconds or inches per second. And so I'll cut this piece this long, this piece that long, and like you kind of get these grooves, and you just learn about what the the format you're working with and the medium you're working in, I
Yeah.
guess.
I think
Um,
it's super interesting because there is sound collage, which could be a variety of different things of, piecing different samples and stuff, but this is literal. a like physical sound collage. You're actually taping, or splicing it together, which I think is very interesting.
Well, and it's really how it just would have been done for years and
Mhm.
years until the invention of the DAW, really, or a
Yeah,
sampler,
yeah,
essentially. Um, and I don't do it. I don't do it in order to like be a traditionalist or something like that. I actually like. I like doing the tactile bit where you're cutting the things up and putting them back together.
definitely.
I like doing that when I don't have any good ideas, and I'll just sit in my house and do that while I listen to other people's records or watch movies and stuff. And it's really just something to do, like knitting almost.
Hmm.
And depending on how long you're going to do it, because I'll tend to like make a big reel of tape. I'll spend like a few weeks just not really doing anything but that, just like my knitting while I watch my movies or whatever, listen to my records, and then I'll go from there and then move into a little bit. I'll start listening to it and I'll feel out what patterns I can find in it.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's kind of like Burroughs doing cut up,
Yeah,
uh, you know, with language. It's just another way to it's another way for me to look at something differently and maybe get inspired by that. And I generally go there when I'm not inspired by anything. Uh, it's just fun. It's a fun way to kill time, and then maybe you strike some kind of gold in your like
yeah.
25-minute reel. You could find 4 minutes of something pretty cool sometimes.
So you also, I know you set up a studio and you do kind of recording for other artists, right?
Yeah. Um, it's just at my place, and so it's pretty limited as a result, like size wise, and quiet things or small things tend to work best.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, sometimes I'll just be out at a show and someone I kind of know or someone I know kind of well is doing something that I'm like, man, that should happen. I think I could make that. I think I could get that on tape.
Yeah,
Just how, you know what I mean? Just like,
yeah. That's
just
awesome.
how I think that I hear it. Um, I, you know, I think it's tough to do with quiet stuff, especially like singer songwriter stuff. I think sometimes that turns out a little cheesy
Hmm.
every now and then. So I don't. It's not really an ego thing where I want to put my stamp on it, but I might see something or be really close to someone, or sometimes it's a good way to get close to somebody. Some of my better friends I've made doing some of these things, and I'll ask them a lot of questions about themselves and whether or not they like think about their lyrics when what they mean when they sing them or something. Just like uh, we'll just hang out, and
Yeah.
so it's very much not a commercial situation. Um, I don't think I've ever made any money from it. I'll let you know if I ever do.
The talking about kind of collaborating with other artists and like building friendships that way, it reminds me of back in Carbondale, uh, one of the best conversations I've ever had with you, and one that I kind of still look back on, that inspired me, which you might not even remember. But I did a poster for one of your shows, and I think it was with Thelma and the Sleaze, I think was the headliner. Um, but it was I did like a coloring contest where I had the regular poster and then I had a blank black and white one, and I brought crayons and let people color in the poster,
Oh
and then
yeah.
had like a contest. And I remember you sat next to me and just had like a long conversation with me about art and about how you talked about like it's not about art is never really about like success. Like you can define success in multiple different ways, but it's never really about like the, obviously you have to pay bills, but it's not about the finances as much as it is the work you're putting out, the quality of the work on your terms. And I remember you talking about kind of working at the record store, and it's like, when I go on tour and it's like I make something, I put out an album, that's what matters as far as like my job and stuff. Like selling records is easy. It's, I don't have to worry about that. Like I can come back to that. I don't know if I'm wording it correctly, but I don't remember if you remember that conversation at all.
Yeah,
Uh,
I do. Huh. Yeah, I would stand by that for sure. I think I would probably stand by it even more now. Just
yeah, I
um,
kind of have taken it to heart. I just wanted to bring it up because I've taken it to heart with my own work of I try not to make work that I think, I don't know what people want really, and I don't know what people will like, but I gravitate towards what calls me creatively, and if other people vibe with it, that's good, and I can make that connection. But I never try to like go out of my way to win this rat race of social media or anything, because it's a rigged game to begin with. And I think that I kind of go back to that conversation with that thinking.
oh sure, and I agree that it really doesn't make any sense to try and come out ahead in some kind of rat race because I mean, all right, I'll probably do a bit of stuttering here. I think that the types of people that you would want to be interested in your stuff are they always tend to generally in my experience they tend to be people that are kind of like you,
Mhm.
where it's like um, in the sense that they'll engage with lots of different kinds of art, lots of different kinds of music, lots of different kinds of movies, and there's really no one thing that they like the best. There, you can go through your Rolodex of all of your friends and be like, oh yeah, there's a few, like, there's a few like alleys that are the main alleys, but the ones that are really into um, the coolest stuff tend to be into all kinds of things.
Mhm.
You know, um, John Cage and Earth, Wind, and Fire, that
Yeah.
kind of vibe. It's like, because why wouldn't you? Like, John Cage is certainly not for all the time, and actually is for almost none of the time. If we're being like real as people, and then you got Earth, Wind, and Fire, and they're for like kind of a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, you can put them on in pretty much any circumstance.
Right. But then, there's also that conundrum. Like, I do think that a band like that, for instance, probably doesn't get its due amongst the heads, so to
Yeah,
speak, because of
absolutely.
how popular they are, and always were, just like
Mhm.
so huge. Um,
And people end up
but
going just to the super huge tracks that they know, and not kind of delving into full albums
sure.
or anything.
Or you hear like, you know, sort of my music nerd pals might tell me about some like, oh, there's a reissue of this Private Press record, like funk record, and then I'll hear it and I'll be like, yo, this sounds like Earth, Wind, and Fire. It's like, you guys know about Earth, Wind, and Fire? I'm like, no, not really. And it's like, well, how'd you skip that? How'd you skip that and go straight to like Private Press, Philly Soul? Anyway, yeah, I just feel like everybody can just sort of like what they like, and it's the same world as everybody getting to just kind of make whatever they want to make,
Hmm.
whatever makes them happy. I'd love to make a funk record. That would be the best.
I, yeah,
I
you
don't I
should.
don't know that I could really like. I could DJ a funk set pretty well, but I can't really like. I can't
Well,
pull off.
either way, I would definitely go to that
Sure.
DJ set. So, what kind of, this is a broad question, but what kind of where do you draw your inspiration creatively? We've talked about kind of experimentation, the cut up method. but is it just kind of you're walking about your day and it kind of strikes you, or is it, yeah, I guess, yeah, talk about your creative project process in terms of inspiration.
Um, as far as actually making art, whether it's visual art or doing audio stuff or performing, I go in spurts where I'll actually not do too much for maybe a few weeks,
Mm-hmm.
even a month, um, which it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel very good to just kind of not do that. But sometimes I'm just dried up, and so I'll listen to a lot of records. I might even go back to some of the old faves and just see if I can scrape the bottom of the barrel a little, uh, lick the foil, so to speak. But more often than not, it's like trying to kind of wander and collect new things to hear and to see. And eventually, when you're doing that kind of actively, I think something will just pop out.
Yeah.
Um, as long as I'm still playing, like as long as I go into the room where the instruments are and I still give it a shot. Um, if I was seriously just sitting around watching TV and not playing, that would bum me out beyond belief. But in general, it's more like a weak version of the lightning strikes concept, I guess.
Yeah.
Not as certainly not as magical or anything like that, but eventually it's just kind of like when you finally understand the answer to something, just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay, I get it, I got it. I'll do. I can go down this path, and then once I get started, things go pretty quick, and then I'll get sort of tunnel visiony, and sort of disappear off into the studio for a while. Um,
Yeah,
I'll
for me,
generally. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
oh, I was going to say, for me, it comes in bursts too. And it's one of those things where if I do kind of get out of the habit of creating, it's very easy to not create. And
Hmm.
so it's the kind of like forcing myself to just work on something. And then through that, it's when I'm in the middle of something, that's where like more ideas pop up. So I'll have like a list of projects that I want to do, that I will get to eventually. But it's, yeah, it's kind of forcing myself to take that first step, and then once the ball is rolling it just keeps going until I have to finish it.
Well, what kind of trip are you on now? Because I mean, when we first started interacting, you were really, really good at woodcut
Mm-hmm.
art. And I mean, and actually several other things already. I remember I kind of had some catching up to do as far as like the kinds of things, because you had just been in school. And so you'd been in this sort of like creating constantly
Yeah.
because you absolutely had to, you were even like paying to do so.
Yeah.
um, and but then even since then you've gone through, and me, this is me watching you from other cities. I've seen you go through other phases and get really good at all kinds of other mediums. But what's your main jam right now? Like
my
when you're
main
just, I'm gonna do something right now, what do you do?
yeah, my main jam right now, because I got my degree in printmaking, and I still might go back to printmaking eventually, and printmaking in comics specifically, um, illustration, that sort of thing. But it's so kind of technical and meticulous, and not having the studio for it. Like I would get a commission here or there, after school, and it was rewarding, but not having the studio setup that I had at school, not having the big press and having to print by hand, was just so much physical labor that it would take me so long. And like I keep delaying and delaying just because it's like working full time and then doing it was not creatively rewarding like that. And then so what really kind of got me back into art was working as a host at a wine bar. and I actually had more time to just draw. And I always hated drawing, which sounds crazy, like as an artist hates drawing, but it's because it's the way I kind of was taught to draw and everything. The way SIU teaches you is to draw things how they look, draw what you see. You know, you take like 4 or 5 classes of still lifes and then take like 2 years of figure drawing to really learn to draw how things look. And so I always got intimidated by drawing because I never knew what to draw. And so it wasn't until I was working at the wine bar and I just started doodling, just started with a scribble and then filling it in, and that kind of catapulted my new way of thinking of drawing and painting and creating these like line patterns, layering them, those sort of paintings. And then it was really during the pandemic that I started getting into this video art stuff, because I've always loved glitch art, and I would make still images using, taking an image file into Audacity, as a sound file, putting different sound effects on it, and then exporting it again as a BMP to create an image file. But then also, I'd be the type of person who just like, I wonder what this sounds like, and just play it. And of course, it's just like harsh noise because it's an image file converted to a sound file. So I was like, I could I could call this music. And so just, I kind of got into making music through the freedom of calling it noise music, of, well, if I call it noise, then I don't actually have to know what I'm
Right.
doing. And that, getting into that sort of experimentation. And then now I find myself doing a lot of video work for the show, and I like it. And I started collecting VHS tapes when I lived in St. Louis, because I lived in an apartment without internet, but I had the same TV that I record the majority of the episodes on, is the TV I had, like a small CRT TV with a built-in VCR. And so I'd go to Salvation Army and get tapes 5 for $1, and build up my tape collection just so I had something to watch while I painted. Um, but then through the video art, that's kind of taken on. It's not so much just a collection as it is like using the tapes themselves as a medium, as like the cut up. But like, this is my canvas, and then the different circuit benders being kind of my paintbrush with it. And then I've been getting more into music just because I needed more music for the show, and have kind of gotten really into vaporwave, which is like, uh, the internet considers a dead genre, but I feel like that's a lot of vaporwave artists just like saying it's dead so that people let
Sure.
them do their thing and not get in trouble for sampling. um, but yeah, no, it's been interesting. I guess, I've just been going with whatever draws me. And I know we've talked about not the finances not being the main draw, but at the same time, I've had Patreon since 2013 when Patreon first launched, and I got about like $5 to $10 um, a month for years. And it wasn't until I started the show that a couple friends and former collaborators were like, "Hey, I really like this. I'm going to throw you some more money." And now it's gotten to the point where I can use that to pay for my Adobe Creative Cloud, which is like, so
Yeah.
just keep it going that way, since it's like not losing money anymore, which is nice.
Yeah. That's great because that cloud subscription is no joke.
Yeah. Yeah. part of me wants to go back to school, just to try to get a better paying job, because I'm in retail as my um, full time job, kind of a record video game store. But then also, it'd be really nice to have the student discount on Creative Cloud.
Right. What's the shop you're at?
It's in Chicago. Well, I'll probably have to
Okay,
edit that out of the episode, um,
that's
but
fine.
it's
Cool.
and but it's like a buy sell trade place, which you've worked at those too, but
Yeah,
um, which is kind of fun. I used to hate vinyl trades because I was very intimidated by them, but now it's like they're actually a lot of fun because it's very easy to look at a record and tell whether or not it's worth taking in, just by
sure.
sheer amount of, whether it's damaged and stuff. But it's a lot of like video game and movie trades. Like, people bring in garbage bags of DVDs and you have to go through them
Right.
and see if anything is worth taking.
The weirdo factor is immediately, you know, increased.
Yes,
Um,
substantially.
from buy sell trade will make your day for
Yeah,
better or worse
yeah, a lot of
much more
characters.
interesting right
Yeah,
away. Because I'm still a couple days a week at a shop here, and I mean, I love it. I think I mean, it can be every now and again, it's the worst.
yeah.
You know, just, a couple of people right in a row will just ruin your day. But most of the time, it's just the most delightfully weird day you've had several days a week.
Yeah. What you're in Bloomington, Indiana, right?
Yeah,
How do you like it there?
I like it a lot. It's got its drawbacks. Um, the easy thing to say would be like, "Oh, it's still in Indiana," but but it's a really beautiful place, Southern
Hmm.
Indiana.
Yeah.
Um, and having grown up basically in the Southern Midwest anyway, more further south than this, I kind of know how to deal with the crowd that people want to warn you against.
Hmm.
Hillbillies, we'll call them. It's not. It has its drawbacks. Um, it's very racially segregated, just like the South.
Yeah.
Even in the bubble of Bloomington, Indiana, which is kind of a, you know, notoriously neoliberal college town.
Yeah.
Um,
Kind of similar to Carbondale in that the fact that it's college
right.
town surrounded by, the South.
Yeah, exactly. I would say the main difference is the amount of money that
Yes.
the
Yeah.
university has. The university is much larger. It's a Big Ten school as far as sports stuff goes.
Yeah. I've visited a couple times, and I was always very, very impressed by, which I guess the school is proud of it too, but the limestone campus is just beautiful.
Oh yeah, it's insane. It looks like castles, like
Yeah.
you're surrounded by castles, basically. Um, yeah, but as far as the community here is great too. I mean, I've got a lot of very good friends that made just. I didn't know a lot of people when Jenny and I moved here, um, and it's turned out to be the right move. There's a very supportive community. Um,
Yeah, pretty thriving music scene, art scene. I know even when I was in Carbondale, there's a couple shows that we would drive to, Bloomington to go to. I think it was called the Owlry. Is that still there?
oh yeah, it's a vegetarian restaurant. They don't do shows, but the people that owned it just sold it during the pandemic, so it's a
Oh, okay.
bit different now.
Yeah.
But there's still it's still a vegetarian restaurant, which is good enough.
Yeah.
For really, as a vegetarian, I'm down with that place existing in any form. But yeah, there are a lot of good musicians here. everything kind of, it remains to be seen what everything's going to look like after the things. I feel like we're sort of still all picking up the pieces and figuring out what exists after, I guess what I've been calling pandemic proper, like the part where, you know, we didn't do stuff.
Yeah.
Now we're just in the pandemic where we do stuff anyway.
Yeah. Which I'm wondering too is like, because shows have picked up back here and kind of socializing and stuff has too. And I know you caught COVID recently. I just am going back to work on Saturday, but I was off the past 5 days because had a sore throat on Monday, did a COVID test, and it came up positive. So had to quarantine for 5 days, and very, very mild case. But at the same time, it's like triple vax that's clearly not going anywhere. And then like,
Right.
not to go on a morbid's not the right word, negative topic, but not to be the news, but it's like with monkeypox too now popping up. It's like, what is going on? This is
Right. Yeah, there's a lot to contend with, that's for sure. And similarly, triple vaxxed, I got COVID and it was not mild. I will
really,
say that. I was not expecting it. I kind of thought that it was going to be a little bit of a nice time off. And I was very wrong. I was sideswiped for sure. Walloped, as my grandpa would say.
how are you feeling now? Any like residual brain fog or anything?
I think the fog has lifted. Just the fog that was already kind of there. I got a little bit of a foggy brain as it is. But the main thing that I've noticed is I still get a little, you know, having been back doing work regularly, I get pretty tired by the evening.
Mhm.
I'm not quite up to snuff as far as just my stamina as a human being goes, and but I also, my voice has, I'll lose my voice by the end of the day generally. Like that's why I'm talking like quieter and a little bit more low register than I generally talk, just because like um, yeah, just feels choked up a
Yeah.
bit still. Which is odd though, because I wasn't really talking to anyone today, so I don't know. Maybe I was talking to myself all day. Who knows?
So a couple more questions. Oh, you wanted to talk because we had to reschedule, and you said it'd be good conversation to bring up on the show.
Yep. I mean, it's probably not as good as I thought it was going to be. It's like Jenny, my wife, and I were making dinner like right before we were going to do this, and it was, you know, going to be one of just a pretty simple dinner, gonna make it really fast and slam it, and then she just like cut her finger.
No.
Yeah, but it looked really bad for a while. Like we were when 8 o'clock rolled around last night. Um, that was, I feel like we were trying to decide whether or not it was a emergency room situation. It turned out not to be. Just one of those miraculous, like once you wrap it up for long enough and kind of, you know, remove the bandage, and then suddenly for some reason it's not bleeding, even though it
Yeah.
really didn't seem like you took your whole finger off. Uh, anyway, it was fairly cut and dry. I thought we might be talking about a trip to the emergency room when I sent that message.
Well, I'm glad it turned out not to be.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. I'm fine with a boring night.
Yeah, definitely. What's some kind of advice you would give out to artists or musicians starting out?
Oh, I don't know how qualified I am. I would just say do whatever you want. Um, anytime that I've tried to do something that I thought someone else might want me to do, or It usually turned out that they didn't really, or I didn't do it the way they wanted, or if I thought I was going to do something that might make me some money. Usually, if I did make any money, it was just right at first, and usually I didn't make any money at all. So, I don't know. Yeah, just do your thing. That
Totally.
took me a while to figure out I should just do my thing.
And then the last question I had is you posted about a mixtape, music for self-deletion that you're putting on your website. What can you tell the listeners or viewers about that?
It is basically just recorded in real time. I did it while I had COVID, like right after I got past the sweating through my bed phase, and I was just sitting around kind of being bored. So I just sort of DJ'd a ton of stuff live onto a tape that I've been into. And yeah, I've kind of been on this ego reduction trip, especially since the pandemic started. And in my head, I would love to do a radio show called Music for Self-Deletion, where it's only things that I think would be good to like remove yourself from the equation while listening to. So yeah, that's kind of what I was up to.
That's awesome.
You should jam it. It's also, the other thing is, it's also just like stuff that I listen to, and I think is pretty cool. I will ride for these tracks.
We'll have a link to it in the show notes, as well as your website and your Bandcamp. Is it Das Bastard or Das Bastard?
I guess DOS.
That's what I thought. Okay, Das. Yeah, Das,
Yeah,
Das Bastard, Bandcamp.
I never thought I was gonna keep using that. Is the thing. It was just supposed to be like,
it was just kind of stand-in.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like Sad Bastard, but then I decided to make it DOS, like a DOS boot or something, But yeah, I never thought I would keep using that same Bandcamp. But just one more hoop, one more hurdle, I suppose, to find me.
And with your solo stuff, David Brown and the Tomorrow Men, how did you come up with that band name? Because that's just solo, right? So for the most part, or is the Tomorrow Men? So it's like kind of like a fictional band, but it's such a good name.
It's a fictional band. There have been a couple shows where I had people be the band with me, but it never turned into a real one, really. So yeah, maybe one day there'll be a real Tomorrow Man, but for the most part, it's myself in my basement overdubbing all the instruments. I'm glad you like the name, though. This weird, like, kind of old man surf band from, I think, somewhere in California sent me a message one time. They were called the Tomorrow Men, and they were like, yeah, we just want you to know that, like, we could share this name. It's totally fine.
That's awesome. I was expecting to be like, please stop, or like, but yeah, to that's so cool.
But the funniest bit to me was that, like, they were just kind of like, some dads. It seemed like they were just some like dads, like, playing in like a show every now and then.
Yeah.
So I feel like they thought it was as, like, kind of cool that somebody else also had that name. It's like, certainly the whole conversation was taking place outside of the marketplace concept.
Yeah.
Where, like, everybody has ownership over everything. It's like, no, the Tomorrow Men. Yeah, you could be the Tomorrow Men too. That's great. So, like, shout out to the Gen X Tomorrow Men.
So I think this was you, and if it wasn't, my apologies. You have a Christmas tradition, right? Of listening to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band?
It's the only, unless it just kind of somehow comes up, it's the only time that I ever listened to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
I
Uh,
love that. I remember seeing you post about that, and I think it was either last Christmas or the Christmas before, but I did it too because I don't really listen to that album that often either. But then I was just like, I should listen to it once a year on
it's still
Christmas.
good.
It's a
It's
great
still
album.
good. But like it's interesting. Those guys get a lot of play for some, and they've got what like there's like 13 albums or it's like a
Yeah,
finite amount of work,
yeah,
you know. But especially working at a record shop, and I'm sure you could corroborate, like people, they really never get over it,
yeah,
and it's great. It's like cool, but like, come on, just save it once
yeah.
a year. I feel like once a year, I'll that'll be my that's it's not even nostalgia because I think it's good still. It's but like I just got this dedicated time,
Just
Christmas
keep it in
Eve.
the vault until then.
Yeah, make sure I don't need to sell it.
It's super interesting working at a record store and seeing what is kind of coming back in a style that's never gone out of style. Uh, and feel like partially it's the internet and partially it's just like drugs in general, but like Pink Floyd is very, very popular with the youth, and they've always been very popular with the youth since they were a band. But it's like very interesting that that's never gone away, but it's also like one of the biggest bands in music history. But when people listen to them, they still, when you discover them for yourself, it's still special and still feels like something that's not everywhere, and I don't know what that is. Maybe that's kind of just people's introduction to psychedelic music. um
It's a pretty good intro, though.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
sometimes everybody's right. I think
yeah.
like Earth, Wind, and Fire,
Hmm.
or the Beatles, or whatever.
Yeah,
But after a while, you got to just like veer away from it. But man, when you're like 13 years old and you hear some shit like Pink Floyd, it's like, are you kidding me? This is insane.
yeah, yeah. I remember my uncle bought me a CD of Dark Side of the Moon for Christmas, and I had never heard of Pink Floyd before, and he was like, this is really weird, but I think you're gonna like it. And he was right. And I still love that album, but it's still very much like a similar to Sergeant Pepper's of a dedicated time of I only listen to it, in this state of consciousness. I save
Right.
it for that.
Yeah, Boxing Day.
Yes, yeah. So what else you gotta what's next for you?
Um, I've been trying to just play a lot live, doing the improv stuff, and I think that I think I think that it's more interesting than just you know I don't think it's particularly challenging to watch when I'm doing it well. I'm trying to play with just as many different people as I can as well, and just get, not just chops or whatever, but, a sense of intuition and understand how to react to people. Um, so I'm really trying to just roll on that. I played this past Monday with a friend, Mark Tester, who makes great records and does improvisational sets all the time. And it went really well. A friend of ours recorded it. So it's cool to listen back and maybe try and learn from, I don't think I really nailed it there. But as a whole, it turned out better even than I thought.
Really?
It goes back to you saying, your musician friends are maybe hard on themselves. So yeah, for the time being, I'm really just trying to play as much as possible, record those things when I can, and I don't know, grow some sunflowers. And
Are you growing any?
oh yeah, I've got like maybe a dozen of them at my house right now.
That's awesome.
They're really big.
Yeah, they're huge. Like the
They're
my neighbors grew some, and just they don't have. I think they all died out, but it was a couple years ago, and I was amazed how tall they get.
Yeah, I was thinking about, we'll see if I actually do this. I kind of want to dress them up as people.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. I don't want to draw too much attention to my house, really. But I've already got the sunflower, so, I mean, hell, I might as well give them outfits.
Yeah. Yeah, a little shirt and, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the show. This was great.
Yeah, I had a great time.
I'm excited for you to see the art with it, too.
Yeah, and it also is just good to catch up.
Absolutely.
I don't think we haven't talked in a while.
We should do this again.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for the show, but it could be recorded again. But just in general, we should we should meet up. And
yeah, agreed.